Hi.
Hey everybody, we're gonna do my Bernina mastery for presser feet and accessories. So I have my workbook right here, and you're gonna be able to download this workbook right from the description portion of this very video. So if you go to description where it tells you about the video, there'll be a link for you to download this workbook. And we're just gonna do the very first part of this workbook today. So this will be one of those multi-video things. But anyway, introduction, read it. We don't have to do that. Feet information, we should tell you about this. So there's different kinds of feet. Do we have one? One with just a number on it? Yes, there's one right here. There's one right here.
Yeah. Okay.
And do we have a C?
We have a C foot.
Okay,
right
so there's
here.
3 different kinds of feet for the modern machines. Now there's old style feet, there's new style feet. If you have an older machine, you've got two pegs up here instead of this solid dam. We're going to talk about new style feet because this is for any machine made after 1998. Any machine after 1998 is going to have this style of foot. So if your machine was manufactured after 1998, you use these feet. So there's 3 different styles of feet. You've got a foot that just has a number on it. That foot that just has a number on it is made for machines that have a 5.5 millimeter stitch width. You can use this foot on a machine with a 9 millimeter stitch width. You just can't go bigger than a 5.5 millimeter stitch width. Then there are, what's this one? Then there are C feet. So this is a C feet. You can see the C right on there. So it says 40C. And that means it's a sensor foot. So it has this little guy, this thing on the side. And this is made to work on the 9 millimeter machines. So this sensor connects to the onboard computer on 9 millimeter machines, and you can do the wider stitches on these feet. And then you have a D foot. This is a 97D foot. And you'll notice how this looks like kind of a house on the top here. You know, there's your roof and the sidewalls. That's your dual feed will slip right into here. So you can use your dual feed. So this is for any machine that has got built-in dual feed.
If you turn it upside down, they can probably see that too.
The notch.
Where it goes in.
Now, that's a good point, because now you've turned this upside down, you see how you don't want to use this without a dual feed, because if you don't have a dual feed built into your machine and you use a D foot, you're not going to get good connection with your fabric because you've got this gap here.
I had a girl I was working with the other day, and she was using the 97D foot, and she forgot to bring down her dual feed, and she was struggling because it was moving all over.
And tunneling. She got some tunneling. Yeah. So if you're using a D foot, make sure your dual feed's down. Okay, so interesting information there for you to kind of keep in your little book in case you were really interested. In your book, you could get the big book of feet, which is like the Bernina Bible. It has everything to do. It tells you that same information about the numbers on the feet and what they mean. It will tell you each foot available, every single foot that is available. It is going to tell you all the different pieces of information you need to use that foot, like what stitch it works with, what width it works with, what length you should use, and what your needle position should be for each individual foot. And then it gives you tutorials in here on how to use that foot to get different techniques done.
Yeah.
So
it's a great read.
It really is.
It really is. I mean, I'm a manual kind of a girl. I like manuals. And so
Paperwoods.
This is it's really interesting to sit down at night and just read it.
And sometimes you're like, no way, that foot does that?
Yeah, it is. It's really a cool book. All of the Bernina books, the big books are excellent resource values.
Good tutorials. Yeah,
they really are.
Okay, all right. So that gets us through page 5 on our workbook here. We're actually going to start right into seams. That's our first segment. We're going to do seams today. So seams is going to cover your patchwork seam, your standard seam, knit seam, a fagoted seam, a hem stitch seam, an edge joining seam, and a flat fell seam. So let's start with patchwork. On patchwork, you're going to use a 1/4 inch foot. Now, I've been reading on the Facebook sites, there's all kind of people doing all kinds of gyrations to get a 1/4 inch seam, like using 34s and set your needle to needle position 4, and it's goofiness. learn to use a 1/4 inch foot, it'll make your life so much easier. And none of this gyrations to get to a 1/4 inch. These are good feet. So the 37D, and we have D foot feet because we have a dual feed machine here. So we would not use a regular foot on this machine. We would use the dual feed. So the 37D, you can see it's got the hole for the dual feed, and you can see that it's narrow. And Laurie, can you put that on the machine? Because I want to point out, we're not actually going to use that 37D. Okay, can you put your, yeah. Okay, so if we look right here, you see how the left feed dog is completely missed by this foot? So this foot has no presence on the left-hand feed dog. What that means is your fabric is not going to be pulled by the pressure between your foot and the feed dog because it's not touching the feed dog. This is for a 5.5 millimeter machine. It is not for a 9 millimeter machine. So if you have got a 480, a 570, 590, 740, 770, 790, 880, you would not use this foot. Okay, let's switch off to the 5070. Now there's no guide on the side of the 37D. Once we get to the right foot, we'll tell you all the different functions on that right foot. Here is a 57D, and there is a guide on this foot. So that's this part right here. And you would use that to guide your fabric underneath, right up against that guide so that you get your 1/4 inch seam. Now again, 57D is made for 5.5 millimeter machine. So again, you're not getting coverage on that left feed dog. So your fabric is not going to pull evenly. It's actually probably going to pull to the right because your coverage on your feed dog is only on this side. So it's going to pull this side, but it's not going to pull this side through. So you're probably going to get skewed, which is probably on a lot of these sites, we see people complaining about that.
That the machine is pulling it and that. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to use the right foot. We're going to use the 97D. The 97D is specifically made for 9 millimeter machines. And if you look, you'll see that the left tongue on that foot fully covers the left side feed dog of the larger feed machine. That's going to get you a nice even pull through.
As if you have it.
If you have your dual feed down.
You have to have that dual feed engaged.
Yes, you do.
In order for that to work the right way.
Okay. Now Laurie is going to show you how to do a 1/4 inch seam. Laurie, do you have to use the foot as a guide for your fabric?
Is that a trick question?
No.
I don't. You mean like a guide?
No. Do you have to aim for the foot? What else can you use to aim with?
I aim right here at this little notch. That's what I use the most.
Absolutely. So that is on your stitch plate. There's a 1/4 inch mark. Do we have our zigzag plate in or our single hole?
We have single hole.
Okay. So we didn't tell you guys that, but if you are doing patchwork or quilting piecing, you want your single hole stitch plate in. It makes all the difference in the accuracy of your seams. It'll not pull your fabric down. You won't get all that weirdness going on if you're using your single hole stitch plate. So Laurie was just pointing out you've got your 1/4 inch seam is on your throat plate.
It's right. It's the very first notch in that throat plate. Now, I have been known to go ahead and use a painter's tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll put a line of tape down.
Right.
And if they have their
that
regular,
keeps your piece straight.
Right. And if they have their table, this line will correlate right with the 1/4 inch foot that's on there. The 1/4 inch.
Your white slide-on table.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so sometimes if you want, just take a piece of painter's tape. You don't want to cover that line.
No.
You want to
go to the right.
Right to the right. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So when she lines up her, oh, she's got to thread
I
her.
probably should thread it.
Thread the machine would be handy. Anyway, when she gets that lined up with that mark, when the fabric feeds back, you'll see that it's lined up about perfectly with the right edge of that foot.
Now, something that I just did, I had my foot down.
Oh, bad.
And you never thread your machine with the foot down. Always raise your foot to the highest position. I also hold my thread here while I'm threading.
Why
it.
do you do that, Laurie?
It keeps the tension and it pulls it down into my tension discs.
Absolutely. She's so smart. There we go. Okay, so now she's going to do that 1/4 inch stitch. And we're using Aurifil thread. So the reason we can do a 1/4 inch stitch and not worry about that scant 1/4 inch business is that with Aurifil 50 weight thread and a true 1/4 inch seam, you're going to come out just exactly right. You're not going to have space taken up in your seam allowance by thicker thread. And you know, if you lose 1 or 2 threads in your weave of your fabric, that's enough to get your 1/4 inch seam off.
So when I'm sewing a 1/4 inch seam, I am not even looking at my foot. I'm looking at this little line. And if you see right where I'm set up, do you see how the foot is right even with the edge of that fabric?
Yep. If you're focusing on the foot itself, you may be too late to get lined up with it because it's hard to adjust once you're actually under the foot. Okay, there we go. Nice 1/4 inch seam. Now what if you just absolutely had to have that guide? What if you could not stitch without that guide?
There is a guide that comes with the 97D.
Wow.
I
see
don't.
that.
I don't.
I don't
like
ever
it.
use it.
I don't use it.
But it screws
I
on
think
right here, and it's like a hump. We have one. It's in the top drawer, I believe.
No.
I think it's in the top drawer.
Oh, don't let them drop. Okay.
Like the desk drawer, yeah. We don't ever use it. But it screws down to your throat plate, and it comes over here, and then it's kind of a raised thing here. And then you can use that instead of the tape. It's really, we find it more accurate to use this foot without that guide. You'll have to take our word for it. It comes with it.
It comes with it.
Take our word for it.
And we usually just kind of throw it in a drawer.
Yes. And it comes with a funky little screwdriver too.
To me, even when you're using, I've never been able to use the feet with the guide on it. Because what happens is that this fabric, you're doing it and it goes right up a little bit underneath that guide.
You get more than a 1/4 inch.
And you're getting more than a 1/4 inch.
Which is irritating.
So if you can train your eye to look, just keep your eye on that line. You know, when you drive a car, you aren't looking right where you're at. You're looking
You're
ahead.
looking down the road. So if we do this, you guys, that's a perfect 1/4 inch seam right there.
What about a scant 1/4 inch? What do you think about that?
I don't use a scant 1/4 inch because I use Aurifil.
Yeah, see, I don't either.
You don't have to. If your seam allowance is accurate, and if you're pressing well, and if you're using fine thread, you don't have to do a scant 1/4 inch. It'll come out perfectly mathematically correct if you're doing a perfect 1/4 inch seam and using good thread and pressing well.
My question has always been, what's a scant?
Yeah, is that 2 threads, 3 threads?
Yeah, I mean,
And it was just to accommodate stuff for people that were like using Gutermann or whatever. And it takes up more threads when you press, and it is what it is. Okay, so moving along. That's our patchwork seams. Easy peasy. Use the right one for the machine that you have. You got a 5.5 millimeter machine, then you're going to use the 37 or you're going to use the 57. If you've got a 9 millimeter machine, you're going to use the 97D. Okay. let's do just a regular, like a garment seam.
Alrighty. Let's see. Did I bring it?
Number 1D we got?
I have a D. Yeah, I have a 1D.
Do we have a 0?
I don't. That it's the same foot, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
It is the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the 0 you can
0 is
use
5.5.
Yeah.
0 is 5.5.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you had a 5.5 millimeter machine, you could use the 0, number 0, which is for a 5.5 millimeter stitch. We don't. We're working on a 790. So we're going to use the 1D. Again, it's a dual feed because we have a dual feed machine. We want better coverage. So the 1D has some markings on the foot.
Has the center line right here.
So if you needed that, you've got the center line. It also has these guys, these holes, and those holes on the back there are to put a seam guide. So if you were stitching parallel lines, you would put your seam guide in there with that screw that everybody is always worried about falling out.
Yeah. We in fact when I load up a machine for people,
You take them off.
I take them off because they end up falling out, and then they worry about it and think that something fell out of their machine. Well, I don't know where your little bars are.
Oh, cool. I don't either. Well, we'll find it. No big deal. But anyway, that's what those holes are for. Okay.
Then you would put that. These are just lock nuts that you just tie it and it holds it tight. So
Yeah.
also the this has, do you see the bottom of this foot and the indentation in it? So they will use this foot also for decorative stitching. And because of that indentation, the decorative stitching kind of rides right in there.
And it doesn't give you additional pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is the other one? Let's look at this one is another option that you could use. So this is the 34D, which again, it's the same foot, but it's clear. It's got a clear acrylic base.
It has more markings on
It
it.
does have more markings.
So like when you're doing applique work or something like that, that you want, maybe you're doing what they call stitch recipes, and you want to line up that stitch, the last stitch, you can use some of these lines to do that and then stitch out a next row.
And you'll see it's got a line going to either side of the needle, and that helps you figure out exactly where your needle's going to start. And then it's got your center line.
It's a nice foot.
Yeah. So the 1D is the one that comes with the machine, or the 1C for 5.5 millimeter non-dual feed machines. The 1D is the one that comes with you get the 1C and the 1D actually, comes with the the dual feed machines. But this is a nice one. If you ever have a wish list for your feet, this would be a nice one to add to it. Okay. Or you could use the 0 if you have a 5.5 millimeter machine. Okay, so this is, again, for stitching 2 layers of fabric together. I'm not sure that we need to show you how to stitch 2 layers of fabric together, but that is what that foot is for. Those feet are for. Now, let's talk about knit. You should all have this in your repertoire. I think it's in there. The 2A.
Yes, it is. It's right
So there's a 2, number 2, and there's a number 2A foot. So we are going to use, here's that screw we were talking about, by the way. We didn't take it off the back of this one. Oh my goodness, because it's really tight. I'm going to need a screwdriver for that. But this is the 2A. And you'll see how it's got this little, like a bar thing right there. So it's making the stitch over that bar, and it's doing a kind of a mock overlock stitch on knit fabrics. We're going to use the 2A because this foot is wider, the tongue on the left side. So you remember on that 97, how the tongue was wider? It's to fit over the wider feed dogs. So the just plain 2 foot is made for the 5.5 millimeter machines. The 2A has a wider tongue, which is meant for 9 millimeter machines. So it covers your feed dogs better.
And if you can see how it covers.
Yep. And that's good. Okay, so to use this foot, we should have a ballpoint needle in, which we don't, so we're punting. We're not really sewing something. If we were really sewing something, we would change it to the ballpoint needle because you're gonna get runs if you don't. We have a microtex in, and you'll get runs in knit with a microtex. So we're gonna use very overlock stitch number 3.
Number 3.
And we're gonna have to change our stitch plate.
Okay, yep. Why?
Well, because that machine will not let us do that stitch with the stitch plate we have selected, because that machine has been set to a 0 millimeter stitch plate, and it knows that it can't do a wide stitch. Okay, so we've set the stitch plate. We're gonna change our markings to the 9 millimeter, and voila, now we have got our overlock stitch.
And I have to put on the 2A.
2A because you're in a 790. If we were in a 770, you would not have to change the foot. On a 790 or an 880, you do have to select that foot.
Now this piece of knit came from our collection of knits.
Mhm.
We have some beautiful knits
We
out
do.
there.
These are Robert Kaufman knits. We've got a suede knit. It's called scuba knit, I believe. That's a performance knit, isn't it?
This is a beauty.
Yeah, that's nice.
And
Nice hand
there's a couple out there, 3. I think that would make beautiful pants.
Oh, the jacquard ones?
Mhm.
Yes.
Beautiful pants.
Okay, so she's got very overlock stitch number 3 selected. We have foot number 2A on. She's in center needle position. Okay, and the reason we're using that very overlock stitch number 3 is because when you have knit fabric, you're gonna move and things will stretch. That stitch will stretch with the fabric.
Now, of course, with any type of a knit like this type, they roll.
Yeah.
They're just gonna roll. And so you just have to kind of take your time. And do you see, I don't know if you can tell, when I'm sewing how there's a pin in there and the thread goes over that pin. That's what's giving you the stretch. It's giving you a little bit extra thread as it sews. Now, could you do this on a serger?
Yes. Could you do it faster on a serger?
Yes.
But if you didn't have a serger, by golly, you've
This
got
works.
foot number 2A or 2.
So I'm just lining up this little indent where it comes out. I'm just lining that up with the edge of the fabric. So if your seam allowance was 5/8 of an inch, you would need to cut that seam allowance down, or you're not going to have your outfit, the shirt, fit. So you just keep going.
That's giving us plenty of stretch.
It really is. I'm almost done, and I'll show them the. And I'm not stretching my fabric. I'm just letting it feed. But it's going to stretch without breaking. You see how that is
So if
allowing
that was a
it?
shoulder seam or, under the arms or wherever, you have a lot of stretch to it. You have plenty of room for maneuvering there.
Now it skipped a stitch here because I don't have a ballpoint needle in. And that, so
Makes a difference. The right needle
Yeah.
makes all the difference.
that it's a great little foot to have.
Okay. And this comes standard with the 790, the 590, and the 880.
Yeah, it doesn't come with the 770.
No, does not come with 770. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, this is actually kind of cool. I don't know, do we have 2 fabrics that have pressed edges?
No. but I can do it quickly.
You just fold it over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then I'll do the same here. So what would you use you've done a lot of this heirloom dressmaking stuff. What would you use a fagoting seam in?
Maybe attaching when you're putting two laces together, and then you can fag it and then pull it apart, and it's decorative. It gives a decorative look.
There's another one. Okay, so we're going to use this one right here. Foot number 7. Foot number 7 is your tailor tack foot. So you'll notice you have like a center bar. It's a raised center bar. What's going to happen is your stitch formation is going to go up over that raised bar, and it's going to stretch it. I guess
it gives it a fringy look.
Yeah,
it gives it.
Okay. There you go. We're going to use that one.
Oh, can I use the dual feed with this?
Yeah.
It was a trick question.
No. That's not a D foot, Laurie. No. Oh my goodness. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're threading the machine, same thread, top and the bottom. We've done that. Attach foot number 7. You're going to have to select foot number 7 because it's going to yell at you.
It will yell.
It will yell.
Oh, right here. Okay.
You're going to go to a zigzag stitch.
Okay.
You want to width the 5.5 millimeter. Wait a minute. And satin stitch length, 0.5.
0.0.
0.05, sorry.
Okay.
0.5. Go up. There you go.
Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this right up in the center.
Okay, and you have needle stop down engaged, yes? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You can, if you want to, loosen your upper tension 1 to 2 numbers to add slack, which will give you a tongue.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. So I just went into my tensioner, and I'm going to do what?
Reduce it 1 to 2.
About like that?
Yeah. I think you had to close that. There you go. Okay. Fabrics right sides together. So 5/8 inch from 1/6. Let's see, what are we doing here? What's this? Oh, it's 6 inch. Never mind. So 5/8 inch from one edge. So they want you to start down.
Okay. I think that's too
loose.
Mm-hmm. Too tight. Doesn't want to move.
I think it was 0.5, not 0.05.
It was what now?
0.5, not 0.05. Point up, down. 0.5. Right there. There you go.
Here?
Right there.
Oh, okay.
Better?
There, much better. So I'm just kind of holding those two together, the two seams.
And look how that thread pulls up over that bar there. Okay. It's kind of weird looking at it. Okay, now, before you pull that off, they want you to take that and pull it off the back of your foot. So just carefully slide it backwards.
Like this.
Uh-huh. Then you're gonna take the fabrics down on the table and you're gonna very gently, whoops, we didn't cut. Okay, very gently pull them apart.
Sort of like a flat felt seam.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna bundle those stitches to make a little different effect. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch that tailor tack foot to a foot number 20D. Which, do we have 20D?
Yes, I brought it out. Right there.
There we go. So 20D is your decorative foot. You see how it's open through here, and that's so that you can see the stitches you're doing. It's got your dual feet, and it's got a big indentation underneath to allow all of those stitch densities to really slide through there. Okay. And again, we're using the D because we're on a 9mm machine.
Now, this would look a lot nicer too if you had a decorative color of thread and things.
Yes. Okay,
Right.
So now what we're going to do here, you're going to select the triple straight stitch, or choose 20D, which I think you
Like
already
that
did.
20D, and then you want the triple
Triple
stitch
straight
number
stitch.
6.
Mhm. Center the foot over the stitches.
Okay, and I can tell I'm centered because I have a little indentation back
little
here,
marking.
and I have the fabric together.
And then you're just going to sew that seam. Just keep it centered all the way down. So what we're doing is we're making little groupings, or we're kind of making lace, I guess. Not really lace, but we're making a decorative effect. So we took all of those kind of loosey-goosey stitches, and now we're turning them into this really kind of cool
Almost like a
effect.
hem stitch.
Uh-huh. So this would be cute, like if you're making a christening gown or something. That would be a nice stitch.
Look
to
at how
add.
pretty that is. And think about that in like our isocord thread.
Oh, it'd be beautiful with a nice glossy thread. Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay. So that is really cool. If on some lighter weight fabrics, you may need to put some stabilizer on it. We did not use a stabilizer on this, and it came out fine. But on a like
if
a
you
batiste,
were a batiste, you would want a stabilizer on the back of that.
yeah. So I mean that's really kind of cool, you guys.
That would be cool too if you to attach lace.
Yes.
You know, and have that kind of on the edge of it looking.
Yes, it would.
Would be pretty.
So that is our fagoted seam, and we are going to wrap it because we're at 30 minutes. So we're going to wrap it on this one. We're going to start our next time on a hem stitch seam. We're going to go through hem stitch, edge joining, and flat felled seams next time around. We'll see you next time.
Bye.